Let's get some analysis now with Khalil Jahshan, the Executive Director of the Arab Center, Washington, D.C. He joins us from the U.S. Capitol. Really good to have you with us, Khalil. The UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres says he's deeply distressed by Israel's complete siege of Gaza as it continues its bombardment of the Palestinian enclave and its insistence of cutting supplies off to Gaza. What's your reaction to what's happening there right now?
Well, indeed, basically what's happening fits what the Secretary General of the UN has depicted. The counterattack by the Israelis, if you will, is causing a lot of bloodletting in vengeance for what they perceive the aggressive attack by Hamas on Israeli targets. And the question is, when will this stop? This type of reaction by the Israelis is not new. We have seen that multiple times over the past 56 years of occupation, plus the last 15 years of siege, and it hasn't worked. So, simply to vent out by already now they're matching supposedly the same number of casualties on the part of the Palestinians has just surpassed that of Israelis. So at one point, enough would be enough. That's what caused the problem to start with, and yet they seem to be proceeding. So the statement by the Secretary General expresses the frustration of the international community with the continuation of this conflict. I mean, Gaza has been declared by UN agencies as becoming uninhabitable this year or next year, and yet this war is being waged, leveling the town, or some parts of the town that already look like a parking lot, and the number of casualties, 900 in basically a day and a half or 2 days, is as unjustified as the civilian casualties that the Israeli side sustained.
We know that Israel's blockade of Gaza for the last 16 years has been deemed illegal and inhumane by many officials and human rights organizations around the world. Are you worried that Israel is now using the latest escalation in tensions to essentially starve the Palestinian enclave completely?
I think, judging from their own statements, Israeli leaders have not minced words, calling Palestinians in Gaza, human animals, depriving them of basic needs, including closing different, let's say, passages into Gaza. From allowing medicine and humanitarian supplies from Jordan, from the international community, by bombing the last passage to the outside world. Yet Mr. Netanyahu goes around telling the Palestinians, you better escape, you better get out of the way if you don't want to die. Escape where? Go where? I mean, it's the largest kind of open air prison in the universe. You're talking about a very, very small area inhabited by more than 2.2 million people. It's the area of a mid-sized town in the United States. And yet this bombardment is taking place, basically exhibiting the same brutality that the Israelis keep complaining about or justifying their attacks on the basis of. This has to stop. It's been tried so many times. It failed every time. And we went back to Israeli policy of refusing to end occupation and to allow the Palestinians to exercise their internationally recognized rights to self-determination and establishing their own statehood. That hasn't changed. As a matter of fact, it has become worse. So there is no essentially light at the end of the tunnel. So when people find it difficult to understand the rationale for Hamas's attack, let's put aside the viciousness, if you will, or the brutality that was exhibited later out of chaos. But the rationale initially for the attack is basically telling the Israelis, telling the U.S., enough is enough.
The international community has largely allowed Israel to continually break international law, be it through its ongoing blockade or the expansion of illegal Israeli settlements, and indeed its response to various attacks over the years. What does the international community need to do now in response to the latest conflict that we're seeing unfold?
A very simple and very easy reassessment of these Western policies. Essentially, you cannot, complain right now because the Palestinians have violated, let's say, international humanitarian law. At the same time, you have been looking the other way. These countries have been arming Israel, supporting Israel, and looking the other way whenever these same laws have been violated. So what is needed is consistency. And that has been absent in the past, has been absent for 56 years, and continues to be absent today. And it's very difficult to be optimistic that this will be changed soon. So what I anticipate is additional violence, more bloodletting. And the Israelis are very clear. They want to eradicate Hamas as a movement, which you can't do. It's like saying, I want to eradicate the Likud party in Israel. Fine, you can say it, but it doesn't make sense. It can't be done because even though you differ with Hamas's beliefs and you might find them repugnant, that's fine. But you cannot eradicate people. These are people, and there are many, they are part of the population. So what do? Eradicate the whole population? And frankly, on social media, we are seeing more and more Israeli supporters saying, yes, yeah, do eradicate. So that's where my fear is with this apparent abundance of support for Israel, that somebody like Netanyahu, who is desperate to maintain his seat as prime minister, desperate to rehabilitate himself, desperate to stay out of jail for criminal charges leveled against him, might actually commit that type of expulsion, mass expulsion, or some type of limited genocide, misinterpreting, if you will, that support, whether it is humanitarian, political, economic, military, what have you, might misinterpret that as a green light to proceed and do whatever he wants to do. And I think the statement by President Biden today is a clear example of that type of statement that I think the U.S. government misinterprets the intention of the Netanyahu government, and giving it a green light like that without mentioning the need to eventually have a ceasefire and have some kind of negotiated settlement for the Palestine conflict, that is basically a recipe for disaster that will come back to haunt not only Israel and the Palestinians, but the whole region and also the West.
Okay, Khalil Jahshan from the Arab Center, Washington, D.C. Thanks as always for joining us on the program.